Hey guys, thanks for coming back. I hope you had a safe flight and no turbulence on the way in. I just wanted to first apologize and say thank you. I am coming off a little bit of a cold, so if I sound a little nasally, I promise I'll get better next week. Just deal with it, and thank you. Let's get into the show. Empty your mind. Be formless, shapeless, like water. When you put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. You put water into a bottle, it becomes the bottle. You put it into a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Water can flow or it can crash. Be water, my friend. Welcome, all you writers, and flyers. Thank you for joining me back again. We are opening up book 2 of the Last Dragon Chronicles with Ice Fire. We're going to be doing chapters 1 through 6 today, starting with the Wishing Dragon, ending with Zaina Online. And I appreciate it. This journey has been quite the learning process. It's been amazing to feel the support of my family and my friends that have decided to not only follow along, but participate as well. Hopefully, many more of them will end up making an appearance. Shortly, here we'll have another one. But let's get into it. We're going to start Icefire, second book, into the Last Dragon Chronicles. We're going to open up with another letter of the second book, just like a letter opened the first one. It is addressed Welfare Children's Publishing, Boston, Massachusetts. Titled to David Rain, 42 Wayward Crescent, Scrubly, Massachusetts. Dear David Rain, thank you for sending us your novel, Snigger and the Nut Beast, which we have now had time to consider. Unfortunately, although we think your writing shows promise, we do not feel that a story about a talking squirrel is currently right for our list. We are sorry to disappoint you on this occasion and wish you every success in the future. Yours sincerely, Scribbly Little Signature, Editorial Assistant. So, right off the bat, that brings me to a couple of questions. How long has it been since the end of the first book? How many different attempts has he sent it in? It's pretty cool that he thinks that this story is worth being shared with everyone. I would not have the guts to publish my first written story, though. No way. But good for David, man. This is awesome. It's a step in the right direction. Chapter 1, The Wishing Dragon. This one starts off pretty easy. David walks in holding his rejection letter, kind of grumbling a little bit. Lucy's sitting at the table working on a new dragon, and Liz is just in the living room as well, and they're all just kind of hanging out. Liz asks him if that's another rejection letter. David goes on to explain, read the letter out loud, and he explains that this is the 14th rejection. And one thing I want to bring up that's actually really cool and very admirable. It's not about how many times you fail. It's about how many times you get back up and try again. The only time that you actually fail is when you get knocked down and you stay down, because then you're never going to move. But as long as you keep getting back up and pushing forward, no matter what that is, whether that's writing a book, finishing a race, training for whatever event you might be going through, the only time you actually fail is when you quit. So good for David for trying, man. Even though it's 14, you'll never know. Maybe he just needs to write a new story, get a little bit fresh of a picture, and go from there because you're only going to get better, right? You can't expect your first project ever to be a killer. They keep on talking back and forth, and Lucy actually brings up that same exact idea. Lucy brings up that maybe he just needs to write a new one, and that Gadzooks had written Spiky. She needs to go start searching for the hedgehog all over, and she wants David to start writing it. We get a quick description of all the dragons that are around, and we get a description of a listening dragon that's sitting on top of the fridge. I'm not sure, we didn't get too much of a description or a name, so I'm wondering if this is Grace. If it is Grace, why is Grace here? No clue about that. I thought she was with Sophie, so it'd be weird to have Sophie be gone out of this story so soon, especially off page. Like, why didn't we get any form of goodbye, hello, nothing? As they're going back and forth, Lucy tells David that he needs to get inspiration from Gadzooks. David thinks that this is silly and for some reason acts like whatever happened in the last book must have been a dream or not real, because David's going saying that these are just clay dragons and that he can't pretend that they're lifelike anymore. That he does love the dragons, but he can't worry about them too much. They're going back and forth, and David looks at the new dragon that Lucy is working on and notices that it has huge, huge paws. Lucy has to explain to him that he's a wishing dragon. You have to put your thumbs on his paws, make a wish, and the wish has to be completely selfless and beneficial. Now, that kind of confuses me. I'm not sure how a wish can be selfless and beneficial. Is it beneficial to the earth? Is it beneficial to somebody else? Is it beneficial to the dragons? In what way does it have to be beneficial? After Lucy's done explaining what's going on, after Lucy explains what a wishing dragon does, they need to come up with a name. David gets inspiration from Gadzooks. He pops in, writes down Graith, which is spelled G apostrophe Reth. There's a little bit going on back and forth about this name. Liz says that this was very common for dragon names back in the Dragon Age, that they would all have a g sound, a hard g with the apostrophe on there as well. So David did something pretty significant that he didn't even know about, obviously with the help of Gadzooks, so that's awesome. But Liz and Lucy also explained that if you name a dragon, you keep the dragon. So this is David's dragon number 2, and if I'm believing that the listening dragon is Grace, maybe David is in charge of 3. That's still up in the air at this point. And after David names the dragon, Lucy says that you explains again that you name the dragon, you keep the dragon. David doesn't really want that responsibility, and Lucy gets extremely offended, and she says that you cannot live in this house if you do not believe in dragons. Kind of leaves it at that. Lucy is wanting to make a wish, but realizes that since the dragon isn't hers, she cannot. Liz explains that the maker of the dragon can still make one wish no matter what. It's the rules. So Lucy gets ready, closes her eyes, puts her thumbs on the dragon's paws, and wishes for snow. David's a little caught off guard by this, and so was I. I don't know why dragons like snow. David tries to ask this as well. Liz and Lucy don't really answer him, say that they're not really sure, but they'll always line up on the window sills in order to watch. David looks out, kind of pokes some fun at both of them, and says, "Well, it really looks like it's going to snow, and it's just clear skies, sunny outside. It is fall time, it says in the book, so it might be getting close to snow, but as of right now, there's nothing, not even a mention of rain." Which you all know how I feel about the rain. Have you ever seen the rain? David checks his watch and realizes that he's late for school. And this brings me to a point, man. We started off this series with David moving in because he needed to go to college. He needed some room to rent closer, and this man spends barely any time there. Maybe the author is just deciding to not focus on that, and we're just supposed to infer that David's doing his thing and getting all of his assignments done. But this is a reoccurring theme that I've noticed, that David is just either skipping or constantly late. David explains that there is a lecture going on that he needs to be there for today and starts scrambling outside. Liz tells Lucy that she can kill Greth as soon as she's done to finish him up, and she starts walking outside to take David to class as well. On the ride over to the school, David is kind of quiet, a little awkward, and Liz can notice it. She's asking him what's going on and why he's acting a little funny. He says that Sophie wants to meet up and has something that she wants to talk about. He gets a little bit more awkward and says that he believes she's going to ask him to move in with her and that he kind of wants to. Liz gives him the green light. She says that it's okay, that everybody has to grow and move on. And if this isn't his place anymore, that they'll understand. It might get hard for Lucy to accept it, but they'll be okay. And that makes David feel a little bit better, but he still doesn't say anything and gets out of the car. And as he's getting out of the car, he looks up and sees that it's starting to snow. And that brings us to the end of that first chapter. But this actually made me think of the scene in the first Spider-Man back with Tobey Maguire when Uncle Ben is having the conversation with him about being his dad. And Toby says some hurtful things, saying that you're not my dad and you need to quit trying. And those are the last words that he says to him before he gets out. And then Uncle Ben's unfortunately killed, like maybe 5 minutes later. And this gave me weirdly the same feeling. David wasn't necessarily rude, but he also didn't answer Liz when they were having a little bit of a sentimental moment. It was kind of sad to see, and it hurt my feelings for Liz because Liz opened up her house and her family to this young man. And even though he's done right by them so far, it still hurts when, somebody doesn't at least have the decency or respect to respond or give any kind of reaction. So it kind of hurt me for Liz, but it also makes me feel good that Liz isn't too offended and she understands that sometimes people just need to grow, and that's true. I've been a big believer in that just with my own familial things going on. I'm Hispanic, and for a long time, even to this day, a lot of Hispanic families live in a house with multiple generations in it. Grandparents, parents, children, great grandchildren, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I've wanted a little bit different and branched out on my own. It's been a huge adjustment, and it's been a huge uh, just learning experience. And we've had to have growing pains within the family for them to understand that it's not that I don't love them, and it's not that I don't want to be around them. It's just that I want my own space, and people have to grow. They have to grow without me there every single day, and I have to grow and learn how to not have their presence as a crutch. That's just part of being an adult. It hurts, but it's also freeing. You get to have so much more uh, individuality and freedom, I guess. Not that my family's a prison. I'm not saying that. It's just sometimes you get caught up and you feel like you have to do certain things. And when you're not living under somebody's roof, you can do whatever the you want. Chapter 2, A Very Strange Essay. Before David heads into the college, he's no, before David goes into college, he notices the snow and looks over at Liz. Liz says that it's Grant's job and that he did a good one. David just brushes it off and goes inside. David's extremely late. He looks at his watch. There's nobody in the room when he walks in. Just a man who says that he looks like he's Norwegian, or maybe Scandinavian. So in my mind, that just means that they're, uh, usually really tall, really lean, maybe just a muscular man, which he is described as in the book, that he's maybe on the older side. He has honey white hair, which I'm not really sure what honey white is. But what I'm assuming is that this man is just on the verge of maybe not graying, maybe just skipped gray and just went straight to white, and that's why it's a certain type of color. But he's described as being wise for his age, He's very steady and stoic. Makes me wonder how old he really is, because this man has spent years and years with the Inuit tribes up in the Arctic researching its biomes and the polar bears, all kinds of things that have to do with the Arctic. And so that's why he's here in college giving lectures on biomes, because David is studying geology. When he gets in there, Bergstrom just tells him to sit and to have a conversation. And this conversation leads to dragons. David doesn't really want to talk about it because he thinks he's going to be made fun of. He remembers when he let slip that he got a dragon from his landlady at college, and then everybody kind of made fun of him, never let it go. So we thought that this is where Bergstrom actually got the idea from. Maybe one of the kids slipped up and said it. But Bergstrom denied all that, just said that he's always had a fascination for dragons as well. And that there's a competition to go to the Arctic with him as a group and study and go to, I think it's Chamberlain, which is a huge, phenomenal, just opportunity for anybody to be able to go on. But David goes on to explain that he doesn't have the money for it. He's already a week behind in rent as is, and it's not something that he can really muster up. Bergstrom says not to worry about it because the person who writes the best essay is going to get a full ride scholarship to go up there with him. They have a longer conversation, and Bergstrom basically tells David that he wants to hear the story of dragons from David's mouth. And David sits down, thinks it's a little funky. He explains to him that he doesn't know much, he only knows one story. So Bergstrom is trying to coax it out of David, and he pulls out an old pocket watch and puts it in front of David. He says, this pocket watch saved me when I was young. Would you like to know how? David gets pretty curious and says, yeah, I'd like to hear that story. Sounds good. And Bergstrom says, it's a trade. Your story for my story. David takes a second to think and goes, it's not a trade, more of a trick, but gives in and decides to tell the story. So he gives a little half recap of Gwen's story over to Bergstrom. And Bergstrom isn't reacting in any certain way. He's listening intently, making sure that he's understanding what's going on. And he'll ask a question every now and then, here and there, especially when David got to the old lady, Guilana. Bergstrom wonders why Guilana asked for a scale instead of the tear itself, because he's sure that the tear would be more power. David's unsure as well, but just says that that's where the story ends. And that's actually where the bell rings. And Mr. Bergstrom says that he doesn't really have much more time. They have to go, but he wants David to write an essay um, on dragons, on if they're real or not, and how David would do that and link it to geology. Bergstrom said that he can find the habitats that dragons would have lived in if they could have survived, what kind of biomes could house, feed, and nurture an animal of that size and ferocity. In order for inspiration, Bergstrom takes out this talisman that he's gotten from the Inuit people that he used to stay with, saying that the stories have been passed down from mouth to mouth for generations. Sometimes that's the only way history can be told. He brings out a narwhal tusk. David shakes it twice in his left hand. Bergstrom explains that this will bring his true destiny to him. So when David did this, I wasn't sure what we were going to see. But David rubs it, shakes it, and sees Gadzuk pops into his mind. And that's interesting to me. If you're telling me that a different type of magic created from uh, a different group of people, essentially the Inuits who are native, that have no connection to Liz and Lucy. At least I'm assuming, because Liz and Lucy have been described as of red hair and green eyes, and for the majority, Inuit people do not have those features. So there's magic in this world not connected to dragons as well, but when it's used, David is still connected to his dragon. That's just fascinating. But Gadzooks pops into his mind, scribbles down the name Laurel, and then disappears. David does not say anything, just says that he didn't really get any inspiration and he's sorry to Bergstrom because he might not have done it right. Bergstrom just gives him a little funky look and dismisses David. As David leaves, he then shakes the talisman himself and tells him to follow their Amma. And I had to do some research on what Amma is because I grew up with this in my household myself, and I just used it as a name. I had an aunt that we called her Auntie Amma, and I always knew that it meant fire in some way. But the natives believe that this is more spiritual. This is a fire that the world uses to breathe, essentially. So it was cool to see that be brought up and have my own personal connection to that. But I'm wondering where this is going to go. And I'm not sure if I mentioned it or not, but the form that's following David Bergstrom says is a bear. So there's connections to polar bears and dragons. Not quite sure because dragons should just eat polar bears. There's no way. But I've always believed that not polar bears specifically, but bears in general have a very uh, magical essence, as I could say, in our natural world. There are a couple of animals that I feel just have some raw natural power to themselves. Wolves being one, bears being another, and elk. There's just a couple of animals, at least around here, that when you see them, you get a sense of power and just a feeling of it being regal. I like to believe that we're very connected to the earth. I have a lot of native in me as well. And so when you are connected to the earth and the earth spirit, you feel more connected to everything else. And those few animals feel like they're closer than others. Chapter 3, A Sticky Encounter. David gets back home, goes back to bed, and a couple days pass, but there's snow everywhere. Tons of snow. Looks like there's at least 2 to 3 feet. It's described that if you go over to the shed, the snow from the roof and that is almost touching, and you could write it down like a big old snow hill. So David is dreaming back and forth. He dreams of a big old island with a tooth shaped mountain on it and polar bears. This dream is extremely real. He's not quite sure what to do, but in this dream, he's hearing footsteps get closer and closer to him, and he can just smell that nasty, rotten fish breath. And if you've ever been near a bear, you know that that's real, man. Just the stench of rotten meat and woodsiness around them. They're great, fantastic creatures, but they smell like a mother, dude. David gets up and he's starting to make his breakfast. He's going back and forth getting some cornflakes, but he catches Lucy out in the kitchen, kneeling down in the freezer, burying a bunch of stuff and trying to get things. As soon as David walks in, she slams the freezer shut, covers everything up, and then acts a little sus. Just putting her back to the freezer, telling David that, hey, it's really snowy. You should help me build a snowman. And when I was reading this, all I could think of was back in the day when my little sister and my little cousins were young. I would, when I was babysitting, air quotations, babysitting, I would just put on a bunch of movies and sit there with them and watch it. And one of the big ones, just like I'm sure everybody else, was Frozen. So that brought up the snowman song for me. Do you want to build a snowman? Okay, bye. David is curious and wants to know what's in the freezer. So in a way to distract Lucy, he tells her that there's a present from Sophie up on the bookshelf for her. And Lucy just jets off without a second thought, runs. And same for David. David doesn't give it a second thought. He just dives into the freezer to see what's going on. And he sees a couple of, like frozen green beans, frozen broccoli, some carrots, some other things, just normal things you keep in a freezer. But then he saw a dragon. He saw the security guard Gruffin sitting on top of one particular little, what I'm guessing is Tupperware. He just said a little bin, but a Tupperware. But David wanted to see what was in it. So he grabbed Gruffin, and in an instant, he felt not searing hot pain, but a burning sensation that could be brought on just from ice, like that hypothermia when you're getting so cold it stings. And he can't let go of Gruffin. It's stuck to his hands. He start freaking out. He's trying to get it out, and he's about to go start running water on it. And Liz catches him dragon handed, starts freaking out and tells him, don't do that. Don't run water on him. It needs to be cold water, otherwise, he'll crack. Lucy comes running in at the same time, sees what's going on, and just jaw drops open. Not sure how to react. She just knows that something's wrong. Liz helps David get Gruffin unstuck from his hands and tells Lucy to bring over the container. Lucy is very, very hesitant, doesn't know if this should be shared quite yet, and just makes sure with her mom that she's sure. And Liz says yes, because otherwise, our curious tenant is never going to be satisfied. She brings over the Tupperware and opens it up. Inside is a little snowball. David is just puzzled by it. He's not sure what's going on. Why is it a snowball? He's trying to ask all these questions, but Liz kind of just deflects it. She doesn't really answer. She just says, everybody keeps things from their childhood. You have your teddy bear, and I have my snowball. Lucy shows David this old picture of her mom when she was about Lucy's age, and David says that she looks almost like a carbon copy. And inside of her hand outreached, she's holding a little snowball. And I'm wondering if that's supposed to be the same snowball. And if it is, why is the dragon guarding it? There's got to be something special about that particular thing. After everything calms down a little bit, Liz tells David that he can make it up by doing some chores and making dinner. David had tried to lie by saying he was just in the freezer trying to plan a surprise meal. Liz says that that was a great idea and that she wants something with frozen broccoli in particular because David had said that that's what he was reaching for. It's a good little way to end it. But now we are into chapter 4, breakfast news. Liz just chops it up to having a childhood connection with everything. Liz and Lucy are looking back and forth at each other to see if that this is information that David needs as of right now. And this whole interaction, the only thing that I can think of is the Centaur Mentor. Chiron has made an appearance. He's given Lucy and Liz the script to the book and said, make sure you don't reveal these points too early. Makes it tough for us. Chiron's overworking, but what can you expect from a from a Greek god's kid? He's going to do whatever he wants. On the book that Lucy had gotten for the gift from Sophie was the dragon Grace. Liz is wondering why Grace is here, and David gets a little soppy and sad and tells him that Sophie actually took off to Africa. She got a job opportunity to go work with elephants on a wildlife reserve. This breaks everybody's heart. David doesn't really show any emotion, but you can obviously tell that the dude is hurting and a little butthurt. Liz puts two and two together that this is what Sophie wanted to talk to him about. And David explains that it was kind of a snap decision. She only had 2 days to think about it, and then the plane was gone. So she said that this was a place she wouldn't feel comfortable taking Grace and made David be her keeper. So there it is. David has three dragons. We don't have Graith just yet because he's being killed, but we do have Grace and Gadzooks. We never got a confirmation on if Grace was a special dragon, but now that she's David's, I'm sure that she's going to be. So we don't have to worry too much about that one. This whole interaction, I wish we could have gotten one with Sophie herself talking to David, but this whole thing made me think about the show How I Met Your Mother when I think it's Lily is wanting, or not Lily, Marshall actually is wanting to get married to Lily. And Lily has a little freak out. She got accepted into an art school, and before she settles down and can't do it, she decides to take that trip and see what could be. And this, I get the same feelings with this and Sophie, like, dang, they seem to have a good relationship building, and like there was going to be way more to go on, and then she just up and leaves. But, I guess I can't be too invested because we didn't really get anything other than her visiting David every now and then, and there was no real commitment. And also, it's a young relationship. Everybody wants to believe in high school sweethearts and true love, but unfortunately, it most of the time it just doesn't work out like that. Your relationship when you're 16 to like 19, you feel it really hard, but unfortunately, is more than likely not going to last. And that's okay. That's normal. You're going to grow from that. You're going to learn. And hopefully, the person that you guys end up splitting up from is cool enough to at least be civil and you guys can have a decent relationship going forward. But yeah, so I got those kind of vibes. How I Met Your Mother, running away, not wanting to commit quite yet. But these guys are young. Sophie has a huge opportunity to go do something that not very many people do. And she seems to be just super intelligent and driven. So good for Sophie. I'm glad that she did it. It does suck for David and what they were building, but overall career-wise, that was a good choice. So before making dinner, David goes outside to start shoveling snow. And he again asks Lucy why dragons like him. Lucy's in the backyard with him, but she's trying to make a snowman while he's shoveling. David looks up and sees that there's about 12 dragons just chilling out the window, watching the snow. And so they're going back and forth. Lucy's not really making any kind of progress with the snowman, so David decides to help. He puts down the shovel and they make a huge one. They say that the base of the snowman is almost the size of David, and then they only give it a little head. All the snowman that I've ever built have been three-parters, not a little two-parter. But this is an interesting take. It's kind of cool. But out of nowhere, after they're getting done with this snowman, it actually starts to rain. Lucy was outside trying to find some sticks for the hands, a carrot for the nose, some rocks for the eyes and buttons, whatnot. But David just tells you to go inside. He'll start wrapping things up, and he takes the shovel over to the shed. When he gets over to the shed, he hears something a little funky behind him, like it's footsteps, and he's starting to get that same rotten seal smell that he had in his dream. And so then he's starting to get creeped out. He thinks that he sees a bear or a bear print. So he goes to check it out. He picks up a rock. And when I read that, I was just wondering, like, if this is a polar bear, the heck is a rock gonna do, David? Put it down, bro. You'd be better off asking one of the dragons to help you. There ain't no way a rock's gonna do anything to a polar bear. Polar bears are 9 feet tall standing on their hind legs, 4 feet to 5 feet tall standing on all fours. That's a behemoth of an animal that only want to kill. Most bears will leave you alone, but polar bears, because there's so little food in their natural habitat, will eat anything. Just so you guys know, polar bears are not cute. They're dangerous. Anyway, David walks up to where he thinks he saw the print, and it's just an indent from the rock gardens. It's just an indent from the garden rocks. So David just brushes it off and then heads back inside. Chapter 5, The Mystery of the Tear. David delivers. He made his lasagna. It was pretty bomb. Liz and Lucy are dragged in by the aroma a couple hours later of garlic bread, steamed veggies, and a bomb freaking lasagna. Bonington is still MIA. Not really sure what's going on with that. Lucy comments on that too and saying that the lasagna looks like it could be cat food and maybe they could call Bonington with that. David tells Liz about Bergstrom and tells her about Laurel. Liz is affected very hard by this. When she hears that, she drops the plates, all the silverware, everything, and just starts staring off into space. David's not sure what's going on, but just decides to press on lightly with it. Liz sits down. David starts taking care of everything. And Lucy again says that dragons like. Okay, no. Uh, David sits Liz down and takes care of the silverware and dishes. He then goes on to explain about the essay that he has to write and starts asking questions about dragons. And since Liz and Lucy are the most knowledgeable, he says that he would very much appreciate basically just a bone being thrown his way and some information. Lucy says that Lucy says that dragons like mountains and snowy places to cool off after they're done flying. David just asks a pretty simple question saying, if dragons were real, why haven't we gotten any kind of proof? Liz gets really quiet and takes a second to respond, but she goes on to say that we just don't know what to look for, that the remains of the dragons are here. When a dragon dies and sheds its fire tear, the fire tear is supposed to escape back into the earth and join the core where the Earth's Alma is. And this kind of mystifies David a little bit. It says what happens to their body then. There should be bones, there should be some kind of fossils, there should be something. And Liz explains that there's a cycle of life for the dragons too, that when they die, their body becomes clay. And there's our connection. When she said that, it made me wonder, are these dragons legit? Are the ones that she's making, obviously? I mean, if they're clay, is she using the same type of clay, like maybe a dead dragon? She found one somewhere somehow. Maybe she's using Gwen's body from the story. That would be absolutely crazy. But what kind of clay? How does she even know that they turn to clay? That wasn't told to us in any of the stories. So obviously Liz has more information that she's holding back. It's tough. It's tough. This also makes me wonder why Liz and Bergstrom both brought up Alma on their own, completely separate, without David bringing it up or making any kind of connections. These two people that have connections to deeply spiritual animals and lands that have magical history. Why are these two people connected by that one specific phrase? It's curious to me. And it seems like it's curious to Liz as well because she says that she wants to meet him, that she feels she might know him from way back when. Chapter 6, Online with Zaina. After all this is done, David goes to his room and thinks slash dreams of bears again, kind of daydreaming, going back and forth. And this makes me wonder about the thing that's following David that Bergstrom had sent. Is Bergstrom the bear himself? You know, people say they have like an out of body experience, kind of like that, but in bear form. As David's checking his computer, he gets a little ting that says, "You got mail." I don't know if this is a thing or was a thing back in the day. I grew up with computers too. I was born in '98, so they were a thing already. And then in my early childhood, I never really remember hearing "you got mail," just the little ding or a notification. But I also didn't start using email or anything until I was way older. I'd probably say like, 2012, 2013 time. Anyway, David gets this email and he looks at who sent it. It's from one of his classmates, Zaina. She is also doing geology and geography over at the college. He's describing her as an extreme goth. High boots, higher socks, little black skirt, jet black hair, and usually a black shirt with some kind of metal band or mythical animal or some kind of cool design on the front. And my first thought was, dang man, we're getting rid of Sophie in one chapter, and in the next chapter we're getting a new girl already. That's crazy. But David is a little hesitant. She thinks that she's a little bit on the weird side, and that if he starts talking to her too, on top of everybody knowing that he has a dragon, he's just gonna be an outcast. But Zaina's good, man. She gets in there. She's pretty funny. She has a couple quips. David can't help himself but laugh. And she offers to give him a book on dragons. And uh she says that her essay that Bergstrom gave her was on Loch Ness Monster. And if the loch can actually be big enough and hold enough food to support a monster of that size. So it looks like this Bergstrom guy is just really good about directing his students and seeing what his students are invested and interested in themselves, and then tailoring his teaching experience to them, which is the way it should be. Nobody learns the same way. Everybody has to go different directions, maybe be told multiple times or shown. And the fact that Bergstrom is able to spend a little bit of time with these students and then individualize their assignments is really nice. It might not make you pass automatically, but it definitely helps making pass easier. David's not really quite sure what he wants to do. He thinks that he can't bring Xana over right yet. He keeps looking at Grace and thinks that Grace is giving him a disapproving look. And so he puts her in the closet. And that's no bueno. Again, we haven't had any confirmation on if Grace is a special dragon or not. But if she is, I'm sure putting her in the closet isn't going to help in any way, shape, or form. And if she starts crying, does David have to kill her or does Sophie have to kill her? And if it's Sophie, she's all the way in Africa. So how is that going to work out? I'm so lost and worried about Grace right now. Ugh. But David plans to have Zaina over on Sunday when Liz and Lucy are going to be gone at the market, just so that they can talk without any interruptions. David can have peace of mind and they can share their progress. Thanks for joining me, guys. That was the first six chapters. I'm hopefully, possibly, no guarantees, but going to have a guest on for the next episode to kind of talk a little bit more on the lore. I'm hoping to have kind of a rotation of guests at this point. Might not be every episode, maybe every other episode, but stay tuned. If you guys have any questions, comments, anything of that nature, email me at gadzooks, the last DM at gmail.com. I will link anything that you guys would like. If it's my guest art stuff, my guest other just social media, whatever you guys would like to see, I'll link it. Again, this is DM. Have a safe flight out and hit no turbulence.